We are on DAF Yud Gimel Amid Aleph, and at the very, very top, the Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Rav Acha bar Yaakov says, after the Gemara has a discussion of the seven rakiyas, the seven firmaments. Thank you so much, Rav Shlomi. So
I'll show you, right?
I'll
bring one.
I take a sweet.
I'll bring it.
Thank you so much. He says, Od rakia echad yesh lamayla meirashe hachayos. There's one firmament that's above even the heads of the chayos, which are the highest celestial level. The chayos are a certain level of angel. And dichsiv udemus al rashei hachaya rakia ke'en kerach hanora. As it says, as part of the vision of Yecheskel, that there was the vision above the heads of the chaya, a firmament which was like the awesome ice. Now, ad kan yesh lecha reshus ledaber, mikan ve'elach ein lecha reshus ledaber. He says, but that rakia, that firmament, divides between God's kisei hakavod, his divine throne, and the angels, and therefore once you get up to that level, you can't even describe it anymore. You can't even talk about it anymore. Shekain kasav b'sefer ben Sira, as it says in the book called Ben Sira, which is a book of wisdom, written by, some say that Ben Sira was the son of Yirmiyah Hanavi, but what the point is that he was a wise man, although he didn't. This book is not part of Tanakh. It says, "B'mufla mimcha al tidrosh, v'mechusa mimcha al tachkor." That which is too wondrous for you, do not expound upon. That which is too hidden or covered from you, you should not delve into. B'mashu horshesa hisponein. That which all you've given permission to contemplate, you should contemplate. And ein lecha esek b'nistaros, and you have no dealings with that which is hidden. Tanya, Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Ma teshuva heshivaso basko la'osa rasha. Thank you. What was the response that the heavenly voice gave to that wicked person, Bishasha Amar, at the time? Which wicked person are we talking about? Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar had dared to say in Sefer Yeshaya, Eleh al boma se'av adamele elyon, that I will go up to the thick places of the cloud, and I will resemble the lofty one. In other words, he basically dared to say, I will go up to heaven, and I will be God's rival. Yatzisa Baskal va'amrlo, Rasha ben Benoshel Nimrod HaRasha, wicked one, son of wicked one, who is ultimately the grandson of Nimrod the wicked. Now, why are we comparing him to Nimrod? Because Nimrod built the Tower of Bavel, where also the Jews of that generation tried to make a tower to ascend up to God and to rebel against him. Shehimrid es kol ha'olam kulo olav b'malchuso, so that he caused the world to rebel against God. Kama shenosav shel adam shivim shana. How long does a person live, says Hashem? A person only lives 70 years. Shenemar yemei shenosena b'hem shivim shana, as it says in Tehillim, the years of our lives are 70 years. B'gevuros shemonim shana. I don't know, you'll have to ask someone. And among mighty people, it's 80 years. So, v'halo min haaretz ad lo rakia mahale chamesh meyoshana. But he says, from the earth until the first rakia, it's a 500-year journey. I don't know what mode of transportation is being advocated here for a 500-year journey. Whether it's walking, flying, supersonic jet, rocket ship, I'm not sure. But the fact of the matter is that to get from the earth to the first rakia takes 500 years. Va'ovyo shel rakia mahale chamesh meyoshana. The thickness of the rakia is a 500-year journey to get from one side of the rakia to the other side. V'chein ben kol rakia v'rakia l'mayla mehem, and the same distance of 500 years from one rakia to the other, and each rakia is a 500-year thickness. So, and we know there are 7 rakiyas. So then we would go to the Chayos HaKodesh. The Chayos HaKodesh reside above the highest of the 7 rakiyas, and it says Raglei HaChayos Keneged Kulam, and just the legs of the Chayos are Keneged Kulam, correspond to all of them. Now, whether it's all 7 rakiyas or even just one rakia, let's be conservative and say that it's the legs of the Chayos are just a 500-year journey like the other rakiyas. And Karsulei HaChayos Keneged Kulam, the lower leg of the Chayos, also are so tall that it takes 500-year journey to get from one side to the other. Shokei hachayos keneged kulam. The thighs of the chayos are corresponding to that amount, to that length as well. And rechuvei hachayos keneged kulam. And then the hip of the chayos also is that 500-year journey. Yarchei hachayos keneged kulam. The flanks, or maybe the abdomen of the chayos, are that length. And Gufei Achayas Keneged Kulam, and the torso of the Chayas is also a 500-year journey. Tzavarei Achayas Keneged Kulam, the necks of the Chayas is also a 500-year journey. Roshei Achayas Keneged Kulam, the heads of the Chayas also takes 500 years to get from the bottom to the top. And Karnei Achayas Keneged Kulam, and same thing for the horns of the Chayas, that takes 500 years, or 500 times 7, whatever that amount is. L'mayla mehen kisei hakavod. And above the chayos is the heavenly throne, and ragle kisei hakavod keneged kulam, and just the legs of the divine throne, the throne of glory, is that 500-year journey, and kisei hakavod keneged kulam, and then the kisei hakavod itself is also that same distance. So melech kel chai v'kayram rom v'niso shochein aleihem. So only at that point would you be able even to reach the awesome and amazing and God who is everlasting. So therefore the question is, how can you even think that you can even make it? You'll die well before you're even on even a fraction of your way onto the journey. So therefore Hashem says, what a chutzpah. And therefore Hashem responds to Nebuchadnezzar, Ach el Shaol Tored el Yarkasei Bor. Rather, instead, you will go down to the Sha'ol, you will go down into the recesses of the pit, and you'll never even come close to me. V'lo b'merkava b'yachid, nor the Mishnah had said you're not allowed to expound even to one student the account of the chariot, the first chapter of Yecheskel, unless that person is wise and discerning on his own and can understand it by you just giving over some of the explanatory statements. Tani Rabbi Chia aval mosrin lo roshe prakim. So even though you're not permitted to give over to just any student a lecture on the Merkava, but you could give him a rough outline, a sketch. You could present to him a sketch in very, very shorthand form, which we call roshe prakim. You can give him an outline of what's going on there. Amar Rabbi Zera, ein mosrin roshe prakim elo la'av beistin ulachol mi shalibo doeg b'kirbo. And Rabbi Zera says, no, we have to qualify that further. You can only give the roshe prakim, that sketchy outline, to a person who's an av beistin. He's got to be the head of a beistin, or he's got to be a person who is always constantly with dread in his heart, meaning he has a sense of sobriety. He's mature. And he's not a jokester. In other words, this is a guy who's very serious. And Ika da Amri v'hu shalibo doeg b'kirbo. Others learn that he has to have both qualifications. He's got to be both an av beistin and a person who's got that sobriety and solemnity about him. Amar Rabbi Ami ein mosrin sisrei Torah elo lamisha yesh bo chamisha devarim. Rabbi Ami says you're only allowed to give over sisrei Torah in general. Now sisrei Torah, we had said, includes Maisa Merkava, Maisa Bereshis, and a lot of other Kabbalistic texts. You can only give that over to a person who has the following five qualifications that are based upon a pasuk in Yeshaya. And the Gemara will later explain what these five things mean. Sar Chamishim means the officer of the 50. Unasu Fanim, someone who finds favor. Vo Eitz, and a person who gives counsel. V'chacham Charashim, the wise man over the artisans. Unavon Lochash, and a person understanding of secrets or whispers. What these words mean is a little bit cryptic, and the Gemara will have to tell us later on what it means. V'amar Rabbi Ami, ein mosrin divrei Torah la'obi kolchavim shenemar lo asachein l'chol goyim mishpatim bal yida'um. You're not allowed to give words of Torah over to a heathen, as it says in the Halalukas. God does not done this, meaning giving us the Torah, to any other nation, and does not inform them of His statutes. Halaluka. And notice that the Gemara makes sort of like a parallel connection. Just like you cannot give over Sisrei Torah to a Jew, you cannot give over even the overt Torah to a non-Jew.
Can you quote something as a general?
So halachically, we're not even discussing today. Okay. We're not even discussing. Torah shebichtav, you're allowed to teach them. It's more so Torah sheba'al peh, which is limited. Armalei Rabbi Yochanan l'Rebbi Elazar. Ta agmarcha b'maisa hamerkava. Rabbi Yochanan says to Rebbe Lazar, come, I will teach you Maisa HaMerkava. So Amar Lei, lo kashoy. So Rebbe Lazar was scared. He says, I'm not old enough. I'm not, I'm still having fun, right? Still enjoying life. I'm not solemn enough. So Kikash nach nafshe de Rabbi Yochanan. But by the time Rebbe Lazar became older and really mature enough to handle it, by that time Rabbi Yochanan had already passed away. So Amarle Rabbi Asi Tava Agmarcha b'Maisa Merkava. So Rabbi Asi says, come, I will teach you Maisa Merkava. Amarle Izakoi Gamir Tamir Rabbi Yochanan Rabcha. So he said to him, Izakoi, he lamented, if only I had been worthy, I would have been able to study the Maisa Merkava from Rabbi Yochanan. But I wasn't ready, I wasn't worthy. Rav Yosef have a Gamir Maisa Merkava. So it's interesting. Rav Yosef had studied Maisa Merkava. The rabbis of Pumpadisa had studied Maisa Bereshis, the whole account of Bereshis, and got it to a very comprehensive understanding of that. So Amar Le Ligmor Lanmar Maasa Merkava, Amar Lahu Agmarun Li Maisa Bereshis. So they said to Rav Yosef, do us a favor. Listen, you learned Maisa Merkava, teach it to us. He said to them, well, first you guys teach me Maisa Bereshis, and then we'll work it out. So Agmarei, so they taught him, and Basar de Agmarun, Amrulei Ligmarun Mar b'Maisa Merkava. So then afterwards they said to him, okay, now it's your turn, teach us. So Amar Lahu Tanina Bahu Davash v'Chalav Tachas L'Shaynech. So he said back to them, no, listen, it says in the pasuk in Shir Hashirim that there's honey and milk under your tongue. Devarim hamasukin midvash v'Chalav Yutachas L'Shaynech. Words that are sweeter than honey and milk must remain under your tongue. So basically, he sort of was a little bit of a trick, I guess. He made a deal. You guys teach me first Maisa Bereshis, and he then reneged and didn't teach the Maisa Merkava. Yeah.
Did we learn? How do we reconcile them? He's not allowed to learn this B'Chavrusa.
Maisa Merkava. Unless, so we said, unless the person, maybe he was going to teach them individually. Perhaps that was his rationale. Or perhaps that's the very reason, Rabbi Black, that he didn't want to teach it to them. But the way I understood it is that this was a test. He said, you teach me first Maisa Bereshis. Let's see how far advanced students you are. And if you're advanced sufficiently, then I'll teach you Maisa Merkava. They teach him Maisa Bereshis, and he sees that they haven't even scratched the surface. They're not ready. They can't handle the truth, as they say, right? So therefore, he says, you're not going to get Maisa Merkava. Rabbi Avahu Amar Mehacha. Rabbi Avahu says, we learned it out from here. Kivasim lilvushecha. Sheep's fleece is your garment. And al tikre kivasim ela kivushim. Do not read it as sheep, but rather as that which is hidden or suppressed. Devarim shem kivshano shel olam yutachas levushecha. Things that are really the secrets of the world should always be on your person, and don't share them with others. Amrulei taninan behu ad vayomer elai ben adam. So the rabbis of Pumpadisa said to Rav Yosef, but wait a minute, Rav Yosef, we've already studied on our own until the very beginning of Perek Beis of Yecheskel, until Vayomer Elai ben Adam, which is the beginning of Perek Beis. That we studied on our own. So Amar Lahu, Hein Maisa HaMerkava. So he said, well, if that's the case, then you've covered it all. You got all of Maisa Merkava, which is all of the entire first Perek. So the Gemara now says Meisvei. So how can Rav Yosef say that the entire first Perek is Maisa HaMerkava? Because after all, Ad Heichan Maisa HaMerkava, Rabbi Omer Ad Va'era Chashmal, I think is what the words the Bach puts in. Va'era Ka'ein Chashmal Basra. It's in Pasuk Chav Gimel that it says that I saw like Chashmal, or Pasuk Chav Zayin, I should say. I'm sorry. Pasuk Chav. Right. It says in Pasuk Chav Zayin of the Perek Aleph, Va'era Ka'ein Chashmal, that I saw like flashing, or like we translate Chashmal as electricity, flashes of light. And so only up until there is Maisa HaMerkava, and Rabbi Yitzchak Omer Ad HaChashmal Ad Ara Chashmal. And he says, no, you have to, it's not until Va'era Ke'ein Chashmal, but you include those three words, Va'era Ke'ein Chashmal, and that's the end of Ma'isa Merkava. The question that the Gemara is asking is, how can you tell me that the entire first parak is the Ma'isa Merkava, if it's really not the entire first parak, but rather only the first majority part of the first parak, but it's not the entire first parak? So it doesn't seem, Rav Yosef seems to have told them incorrect information, because he told them that up until Parak Beis, through the end of the first chapter is Ma'isa Merkava, whereas you see only until Pesach Chav Zayin of the first Parak is Ma'isa Merkava. So the Gemara's answer is, Ad va'era magmerinan, mikan va'elach masrinan rashe prakim. The Gemara says really the entire first parak is Ma'isa Merkava, but the first part until Pasuk Chav Zayin is less esoteric, and then from that point onwards you only give over to a student the rashe prakim, the sketchy, give it over sketchy information. And Ika da Amri Ad va'era masrinan rashe prakim mikan va'elach imuchacham mevin midaito in ilolo. And others learn that even the first part, from Pasuk Aleph to Pasuk Chav Zayin, you only give the Rashe Prakim, the outline, and then from Pasuk Chav Zayin onwards, if he's able to discern on his own, then you can teach him, and if he's not able to discern on his own, you do not teach him. But the bottom line is that the entire first chapter of Yechezkel is considered to be Ma'isa Merkava. Frek the Gemara, Umi darshinan bechashmal, since when is it permitted to expound and to explain the pasuk having to do with the chashmal, having to do with the electric flashes? V'hahahu yanuka dedarish b'chashmal. Look at the following story. There was a child who once was able to expound about this chashmal. V'nafka nura v'achalte, and a fire came down from the chashmal. It sounds like it came down from heaven, from where the chashmal is located. These fiery flashes from the heavens, and it consumed him. So the Gemara answers, Shaini Yanuka delav mati zimne. No, to a mature adult you are allowed to teach without any fear of repercussions. But the child, the reason why this was dangerous is because the child had not yet reached the age of where he was, where it was appropriate for him to have this information. Amar Rav Yehuda Baram Zocher Oso Ha'ish Lato B'Chananya ben Chizkiya Shemo. It's important to remember the following person for the good. His name was Chananya ben Chizkiya. Ilmalihu Gano Sefer Yechezkel Shahu Devar Sofrim Divrei Torah. Because if it were not for this person, the book of Yechezkel would have been put into Geniza permanently, because there were too many things that in Sefer Yechezkel that contradict the words of the Chumash, having to do with the whole sacrificial order and the Kohanim and so forth. There are too many contradictions. So they wanted to put it to Geniza, saying that it was too misleading. So So what did he do? They brought him 300 jugs of oil, and he went up to an attic for the long term so that he could sustain himself. And he didn't leave the attic until he was able to expound upon the entire book of Yechezkel and reconcile it with the Chumash. Tana Rabbana. So the Bryce now continues, and it says, Ma'isa betinok echad shahayakori beveis rabo b'sefer Yechezkel v'hayavimevin b'chashmal v'yatza eish mechashmal b'sarfaso u'bikshu ligno sefer Yechezkel. This Bryce sort of puts these two things together. This idea of, number one, the child getting killed from the chashmal because he was able to understand what his Rebbe was saying about the book of Yechezkel, and number two, that they wanted to put it into Geniza specifically because a child had been killed as a result, and they wanted to prevent it from happening ever again. So Amr Lahem Chananya ben Chizkiya, and some have the girsa that it was Reb Shimon Gamliel who said this. But the point is, he says, Im zeh chacham hakol chachamim hein. Just because you had one unusual, extraordinary child who was capable of understanding the Ma'isa Merkava, and as a result he perished, do you think that all children are going to reach that level? In other words, this was a fluke. This is something that will never be repeated again. So you don't have to put Sefer Yechezkel into Geniza because of that one child. My chashmal. What does the word chashmal mean? Now we translate it today in modern Hebrew. We use it for electricity, but that's, it could be that's what it was. Electric flashes like lightning. What? Could be, but surely Yechezkel didn't have AC and DC back. He didn't have a Tesla coil in his time. So we're sort of extrapolating that's what it was. So what is the word? What is the actual derivation of the word? So Amar Rav Yehuda. So Rav Yehuda says, Chayos Eish Memalalos. It's a contraction of three words. Chayos, which are those high-level angels. Eish, which is fire. Memalalos, they speak. So when the angels speak, fire, this flash of fire emanates from their mouth, and that's the vision that Yecheskel had. B'masnisa Tana, itim chashos, itim memalalos. That the Brisa says that sometimes the angels are silent, sometimes the angels are speaking, and that's what the word chashmal is, a contraction of chashos and memalalos, because b'sha'a shehadibur yosem mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu chashos, b'sha'a she'en hadibur yosem mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu memalalos. That when God is speaking, then the angels are silent, and when God is not speaking, the words do not come from Hashem, so then the angels speak, and the fire comes from their mouths. B'achayos ratzov v'shov kimarei habazak. So the pasuk in the Maisa Merkava says that the chayos were going to and fro, kimarei habazak, like the vision of bazak. So first, my ratzov v'shov. What does it mean to and fro? Amar Rav Yehuda k'or hayotze mipi hakibshan. It's like when you have shards of pottery burning as fuel in an oven, and there are, the fire flickers in between the shards. That's what the vision of these flashes of fire were as the angels were speaking. My kimarei habazak, and what is like the vision of bazak? Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina kor hayotz mi bein hacharasim. It's like the fire that goes from between the shards, and Rashi explains that over here, it's referring to a certain kind of utensil that goldsmiths use in order to create an intense heat. There's a porous container where they put shards of pottery as fuel, and you light it, and I guess that will be your heat source for melting gold, and as a result, the fire comes out of those pores, flashing, flickering, flashing out, and that's what Kimarei HaBazak refers to, like the vision of the Bazak, of these flickering flames. Amar Reb Yossi bar Chanina. Va'era v'hinei ruach sa'ara ba'a min hatzafon, anan gadol ve'esh mislakachas v'noga lo saviv, u'mitocha ke'en chashmal mitocha esh. So the Yecheskel describes his vision. He says, I saw that there was a stormy wind coming from the north with a big cloud and fire from amidst that cloud and a great aura of brightness around it. And umitocha ke'en chashmal mitocha eish. And from amidst the cloud, there was this sort of chashmal that was coming from the fire. These flashes coming from the fire. So the Bach here now has the girsa based on Rashi, my bayahasa. This represents God's Shekhinah surrounded by his entourage. What is God's Shekhinah doing in the north, which is Bavel? Right? Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, Shahalach lichbosh es kol olam kulo tachas Nebuchadnezzar harasha. That what basically God was doing is that God was sort of placing the entire world under the domination of Nebuchadnezzar by giving him this honor of having his holy entourage rest directly over Babylonia. And the reason why Hashem did this, he gave so much honor and credit to Nebuchadnezzar, is because he knew that Nebuchadnezzar was conquering the Jewish people. And he didn't want the world to say that the Jews were conquered by a lowly people. The Jews should only, because of our greatness, should only be conquered by a great people. So therefore I'll give kavod to Nebuchadnezzar by showing his greatness to the world, and that way it'll, like when the Nazis were the world power. That's why, only someone like Hitler had the koach to be able to subjugate the Jewish people. Spain, right? Same idea. Rome, right? Greece, etc., etc. So Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mi goram li she'eh shamash la'ovdei pesilim avonosem shel Yisrael hein garmu li. So God laments and he says, "Oi, that I have to go and serve, so to speak. I have to provide service to an Oved Kochavim like Nebuchadnezzar. I'm only doing it because of the sins of the Jewish people. Had they not sinned, Nebuchadnezzar would not have to be provided all this glory that I have to go now and schlep over to Bavel and give him this kavod." Next, Va'era hachayos v'hinei ofan echad ba'aretz etzel hachayos. Part of Yecheskel's vision is he sees these chayos, the celestial angels, and there is a wheel that is on the earth, and then it goes up all the way to the chayos. Amar Rabbi Lazar Malach Echad Shehu Omeid Ba'aretz V'Rosham Hagi Ital Hachayos. This is descriptive of a certain angel, this Ophan, this type of wheel angel, is descriptive of an angel whose feet go to the ground and whose head reaches up to the Chayos in the highest Rakia. B'masnisa Tana Sandalphon Shemo. And the Braisa even gives him a name. His name is Sandalphon, which is a name of an angel which we find in a lot of Kabbalistic and Midrashic Hechalot material. And the Gavoa Mechavero Mahalach Hamesh Meyoshana, and he is higher from, I guess, his accompanying angel, whatever that, or his accompanying angels, 500 years journey, because he goes all the way up to the Chayos. The Omed Achore HaMerkava, and he stands right behind the Merkava, which is right above the Chayos. The Kosher Kisarim Lakona, and he places crowns on his creator. So the Gemara now says, Eini v'haksiv baruch kavod Hashem imekoma. How can you say this? Don't we say that God, the glory of God, is blessed from His place? Now, when we say from His place, which is what the angels say, this implies that the angels don't know where God's place is. That's why we say in Kedusha also, Mimakoma hu yifen barachamim, that only from His place, but we don't know Hashem's place is so lofty, there's no way for even angels to know where Hashem's place is. So how can you suggest that Sandalphon knows where God's Kisei HaKavod is to be able to put a crown on Hashem? So Michlal di Makomo Leka di Adalei. So the Gemara answers, I'll tell you what really happens. Ella, I'm reading from the Bach, Ella dekashale lekeser umashpio b'shema meforash, va'azal taga v'yosef beduchte. The way it works is that Sandalphon utters an incantation using the ineffable name of God onto the crown. The crown then magically flies to wherever Hashem's head is, Kavyachol, and rests on his head. Sandalphon doesn't place the crown directly on Hashem's head, but he causes the crown to fly and rest on the Kisei HaKavod on Hashem's head. Amar Rava Kol Shara Yecheskel Ra Yeshaya. So Rava now tells another important statement. Yecheskel's vision is of the most esoteric nature more than any other Navi. But don't think that means that Yecheskel is a superior Navi to all the others that came before him. Every vision that Yecheskel had, Yeshaya also had of the Maisa HaMerkava. But Lama Yecheskel doime leben kfar shiras HaMelech. Well, Lama Yeshaya doime leben krach shiras HaMelech. The difference is like this. Yecheskel is like a villager who sees the king. Yeshaya is like a city slicker who sees the king. If you live in the big city, in the capital, let's say, where the king is always around, so you see the king, it's not such a remarkable thing. So therefore, you don't have to write about it. But if you're a guy that lives in the village and you take a trip, for thousands of miles to go see the king, wow, that's amazing, I saw the king. So then you have to write it about it. That's why Yeshaya doesn't record it and Yecheskel does. Tosfos also points out that Yecheskel lives in Bavel. So for him to have a vision of the Maisa Merkava is much more remarkable than Yeshaya, who's in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, a lot more to say about this. Amar Reish Lakish, Mai Dichsiv, Shiru Lashem Ki Ga'o. So sing to God because He is truly exalted. So Shira Lemi, Shemiskoa Al Hageim. Sing to He who is exalted above the exalted ones. Da'amar Mar, Melech Shebachayos Ari. Now that's why the double language of Ga'o, because not only is God exalted, but He's exalted above the exalted. Because we know that the king of the wild creatures is the lion. Melech Shebabehemo Shor. The king of the domesticated animals is Chaim Shor. And Melech Sheba'ofos Nesher. The king of the birds is the eagle. Va'adam Yisko Aleha. And human beings are exalted above all of the animals in the animal kingdom. Ve'akadosh Baruch Hu Misko Al Kulan. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is exalted and loftier above all of these. Ve'al Kol HaOlam Kulo Kasuv Echad Om Ve'al Kolam Kulo. And for over the entire universe. Okay. Now, that's why Shira Lashem Ki Ga'o Ga'a. Now the Gemara brings a stira in Psukim. Kasav echad oimer udemus pnei pnei adam upnei Aryai el hayomin la'arbatam upnei shormei asmo la'arbatam v'goimer. In the chapter 1 of Yecheskel, it describes the Maisa HaMerkava, and it describes the chariot of God having 4 sides, and each side of the chariot has an image of a different face. And the 4 faces are the face of a human being, the face of a lion, the face of an ox, of a shore, and the face of an eagle. But then if you look in chapter 10 of Sefer Yechezkel, when it once again describes the four faces of the chariot, it has a different four faces. Ve'arba panim le'echad, pnei ha'echad pnei ha'kruv, u'pnei ha'sheni pnei adam, ve'ashlishi pnei Aryai, ve'aravi pnei nesher. It says that one face was the face of a kruv, a cherub, the other face was a human face, the third one was the face of a lion, and the fourth face was the face of an eagle. So what happened to the shore? V'ilu shore lo kachashiv. The shore is missing. What happened to it? So Amar le Reish Lakish Yechezkel bikesh alav rachamim v'hachal lekruv. That Yechezkel prayed for mercy, so that the face of the shore turned to the face of the kruv. Why? Why is that a merciful act? Amar lefanav ribono shalom kategar yeyaseh sanegor. Because it's not right, because what is the shore? Not only is the shore the most powerful of all domesticated beasts, but it's also a reminder of the Echeta Egel, because it's the parent of the Egel Azav. So that should not be on God's chariot as a constant reminder to Hashem of the Cheta Egel. So my kruv, what is a cherub? What is that face? So Amar Rabbi Avohu Kerabia. Shekain bebavel currently Yanuka Rabia. It's really the face of a baby, because that's what they call a baby in certain places. They call it a rabia. Amalei Rav Papa le Abaya elamei ata dichsif pnei ha'echad pnei ha'kruv pnei ha'sheni pnei adam ha'shlish pnei Aryai v'riv pnei nesher hainu pnei kruv hainu pnei adam. So I don't understand. According to that, in chapter 10 of Yechezkel, you're telling me that 2 out of the 4 faces were the same face. They're both human, a baby face and a human face. What's the difference between the two? So the Gemara answers, Ape Ravravi v'Ape Zotri. No, there's a very significant difference. One's a baby and one's an adult. And there's a significance which we really don't understand what the Gemara is trying to communicate here, but obviously there's an import to each one of these faces, and the difference between an adult face and a baby face is just as significant as the difference between a human face and an animal face, let's say. Oh, now, Kasav Echad Omer, Sheish Knafayim, Sheish Knafayim La'echad. Now let's go further into Maisa Merkava, which describes the structure of the angels. And the angels are described as having, this is in Sefer Yeshaya. It says, in Yeshaya also, there's a bit of an image of the angels, and it says that the angels have 6 wings. And V'kara Zel Zevi Omar, and they call out to each other and they say, Kadosh, 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 the Trisagion, the triple declaration of holy, holy, holy. Because of Echad Omer ve'arba panim le'echas ve'abar knafayim le'echas lahem. But in Yechezkel it says that there are 4 wings to the angels. So the question is, what happened to 2 of their wings? 2 wings disappeared. So lokasha kam bizman shebeis hamikdash kaim kam bizman shein beis hamikdash kayim kiviyachol shenismatu kanfei hachayos. That when the temple is standing, the angels have 6 wings. Once the temple is destroyed, the angels lose 2 of their wings, as it were. That there's a diminution of the heavenly entourage when the temple is destroyed. So hey minayu imot. So now the question is, okay, which 2 wings were taken away from the angels? Because we know that the angels' wings cover them from head to toe. So which wings are now removed after the churban? Amar of Chananel Amarav Osan Sha'omro Shira Bahen. It is those wings with which the angels sing to God through the flapping of the wings. Now, how do I know this? Because it says, Dichsiv hacha ubishtayim ya'ofeif v'kara ze'el zevi omar, that with 2 wings, in Sefer Yeshaya it says that with 2 wings the angels flap their wings, and through the flapping they're able to recite words, and in some way the flapping of the wings causes speech to be evoked from the angels. And it says in Mishlei that your eyes will flap about it, and they're talking about flapping wings, and they disappear. So this is an indication that is the flapping wings of the angels that disappear. The Rabbanan Amri Osan Shemachasos Behen Ragleihem. And the Chachamim argue, and they say that it is not the flapping wings that disappeared, but rather the wings that cover their legs are the wings that disappeared. So they retained their upper wings. It's only the 2 lower wings that disappeared at the Churban. Shene'amar v'ragleihem regel yeshara. And how can I prove this to you? Because in Yechezkel's vision, he describes the legs of the angels as being straight. Now, v'ilav de'imot mina haviyada. And if the wings had not been removed, how would Yechezkel know what the legs look like? He must have been able to see them in his vision. So the Gemara says, so that's proof that the lower wings were the ones that were removed. The Gemara says, no, not necessarily. Dilma de igloi v'chazile. Maybe they were temporarily revealed, and he was able to see the legs, but then the wings covered them up again. So, because if you don't say that, because Yecheskel also had a vision of the angels' faces. Now, normally the wings cover their faces, so how could he see their faces? It must be that there was a temporary revelation or pulling back of the wings, and he saw their faces. Same too, he saw the legs. So you have no raya from here that the legs were the wings that were removed. So the Gemara says, "Ela di igalia b'chazile hachanami di igalia b'chazile." That's what I just spoke out. But the Gemara says, no, that's not a comparison. Hachi hashda hasam bishlama ape urech araligluye kame rabbe. But kari lav urech araligluye kame rabbe. The Gemara says, no. You can't demonstrate from the fact that Yecheskel had a vision of their faces that they must have pulled back their wings temporarily, because over there it's normal for a servant to reveal his face before his master, even though it's normally veiled, because when you speak to your master, you want to speak, you pull up the veil. So too the angels would uncover their wings so that they could speak. But if a servant's standing before his master, he's not going to reveal his legs to his master. So therefore, the fact that Yecheskel is able to successfully describe their legs is an indication that that those wings must have been missing. Next, Kasav Echad Omer, Elef Alfin Yisham Shunei, V'Rabo Rivavan Kadamohi Yukuman. So we have a pasuk in Daniel that says that there are thousands of angels who serve him, and myriads upon myriads that are before him. The Kasav Echad Omer Hayesh Mispar Legedudav. But then there's a pasuk in Eov that says, "Is there any number to his forces?" And that implies that there's an infinite number of angels. So the pasuk in Daniel gives you a finite number. The pasuk in Eov says there's an infinite number. So how do you reconcile it? Lo kasha kam bizman shebeis hamikdash kaim, kam bizman shein beis hamikdash kaim. Ki b'yachol shenismata pamalya shel mayla. The answer is that when the temple is standing, there's an infinite number of angels. Once the temple is destroyed, as it were, there's a diminution of God's heavenly entourage, and therefore there becomes a finite number that's in the thousands and tens of thousands. Tanya Rebbe Omer Misham Abba Yossi ben Dustoi Elef Alfin Yisham Shunei Mispar Gedud Echad the Ligdud Avein Mispar. He says, no, this is how you reconcile the psukim from Daniel to Eov. In Daniel, it's describing how many angels are per platoon, but there's the book of Eov is describing the number of platoons. There's an infinite number of platoons, and in each platoon of angels, there is tens of thousands. Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar, Elef Alfin Yisham Shunei Lenahar Dinor. And Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba says, no, I have a different way of reconciling it. Eov is talking about the total number of angels, which are infinite in number. Daniel, which was talking about the tens of thousands, is talking about angels who are specifically stationed at a place called the Dinor River, because that's really the context of that pasuk. Nahar Dinor neged v'nafak min kadamohe elef alfin yisham shunei v'rabba rivavan kadamohe yukumun. Because that's what the first part of the pasuk says, that the angels that are stationed by the river of Dinor, which is a heavenly river that's made out of fire instead of water. So the Gemara now asks the question, where does this river emanate from? Mehecha nafik. So the Gemara says, Mizei asin shel chayos. The perspiration of the chayos is what causes, and they perspire fire, these chayos, because that's why they're called very high, lofty celestial angels. Their sweat is fire, and that's where the river originates, from their sweat. And ulehechan shafich, and where does it outlet out to? Amar Rav Zutra bar Tuvia Amarav al Rosh Rishoyim begenim, over the heads of the wicked in Gehenna. That's sort of like part of the punishment of Gehenna. Shenemar Hinei Saras Hashem Chema Yatsa V'Sar Mischalel al Rosh Rishoyim Yachul. As the pasuk says in Yirmiyah, that the storm of God is wrath, of the heated wrath. It goes out and it goes onto the heads of the wicked. V'Rav Acha bar Yaakov Amar Al Asher Kumetu. No, Rav Acha bar Yaakov says it doesn't go over the heads of the wicked in Gehenna, but rather it says it goes over the heads of those who were suppressed or withheld. Now, what does it mean over the heads of those who were withheld? So the Gemara is about to tell us that God created enough souls to come into this world such that the world should have really been created, and then after 1,000 generations of humanity, only then was the Torah meant to be given. But God saw that the world could not survive for 1,000 generations without Torah, And so therefore he took away 974 generations of neshamas and started with only 26 generations from the time of creation to the time of Matan Torah, from Adam until Moshe Rabbeinu. What happened to all of those neshamas that in those 974 generations? Hashem takes those neshamas and pours the fire from Nahar Dinor over their heads. Now, why is that necessary? Because these neshamas, because they're immature, they're very full of energy, and they would have destroyed the world if they would have come into existence. And so in order to suppress them in some way, to sort of rehabilitate them, Hashem has to pour the fire of Nahar Dinor over their heads. So velo ace, so because Shenamar Asher Kumetu velo ace Nahar Yutzak Yisodam, as it says that they were who were withheld without a proper time, without being able to come into this world, there will be a river that will be poured over them. So Tanya Amar Reb Shimon HaChassid Elu Tishameos v'Shivdim v'Arbadoros Shekumtu Lihibaros Kadam Shenivra Ha'olam V'lo Nivra. This refers to the 974 generations which were withheld from being created, and they were not created. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'Shasam B'Chol Dor V'Dor V'Hein Hein Azei Panim Shebedor. But what did God do? He takes these neshamas that did not get the opportunity to come into the world in a normal sequence of 974 generations, and he takes in every generation he takes some of those neshamas and puts them intersperses them into various different generations of human history. But because they're such bold neshamas, these are the people who have the most azus panim. The most chutzpah of the generation are these people who were originally created and meant to be as part of the beginning of creation. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Asher Kumtu Livracha Hu Dichsiv Elu Tamidei Chachamim Shemekamtin Sheina Me'atzman Al Divrei Torah Ba'olam Hazeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Megalal Hem Soid La'olam Haba. He has a totally different interpretation. He says that this pasuk, which you just quoted, talking about those who were withheld and have this river poured over their heads, no, it's not talking about a punishment of Nahar Dinor. It's referring to Talmidei Chachamim, who withhold sleep from themselves. So these are people in this world. Hashem will reveal to them the secrets of the universe, which is this river, which is flowing with the secrets of the universe, will be pouring over their head in the next world, and that's what the pasuk is referring to, not to the river of Nahar Dinor. You have a wonderful day.